My father counted out $280 onto the kitchen table, mostly 20s, one crumpled 10 on top, and told me that was everything he owed me for 26 years under his roof. Then he said, "Get your things before your mother has to watch this longer than she needs to." I stood on the porch 4 minutes later with a duffel bag and a laptop bag, and I heard the deadbolt turn behind me before I'd even made it to the sidewalk. The porch light went out a second after that, on purpose, I think, though I'll never know for sure. My name is Owen Pratt. I want to tell you what happened between that porch light going out and the next morning, because by the time the sun came up, 27 people were trying to reach me, and not one of them knew where I'd actually slept that night. Before I go further, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I read every one. Now let me take you back a few hours earlier, to the kitchen table, where this actually started. I was 26, still living at home, mostly to help with my younger brother Tyler, after our parents' hours got cut at the plant, and partly because rent in that town made no sense to pay twice over for the same square footage I already had for free. What my parents didn't fully understand, because I'd never explained it in a way that meant anything to them, was that for the past 14 months I'd been building a small software company out of my bedroom, a scheduling tool for independent contractors called Shiftline, up to around 300 paying customers and $11,000 a month in recurring revenue by the time all this happened. My father called it my computer thing. He wasn't wrong that it looked like nothing from where he was standing, a kid at a desk, typing instead of clocking in somewhere. The fight that night started over dinner, when my father brought up my cousin Derek, who'd just made shift supervisor at the same plant, and asked when I was going to stop playing around and get something with a real paycheck attached to it. I said Shiftline paid me more most months than shift supervisor did. He laughed the way you laugh at something you've already decided isn't true. I said something back I probably shouldn't have, about how he'd never once asked a single real question about what I actually did all day, and he stood up so fast his chair hit the wall. "You want to talk like a grown man," he said. "You can live like one, starting tonight." I walked out of that house without my phone charger, without a coat, with $280 and a laptop that still had 40% battery. I didn't know that 4 blocks away, sitting in my duffel bag inside a phone I hadn't turned back on yet, something I'd been quietly building for over a year, was about to change everything, that same night, while I had no idea it was even happening. I spent that night in my car, parked behind a 24-hour laundromat, 2 towns over, seat reclined, jacket balled up as a pillow. I used $11 of the $280 on a gas station sandwich and a coffee I nursed for 3 hours to justify sitting in the parking lot. The laundromat's fluorescent sign buzzed through the windshield the whole night, on and off, on and off. And at some point, I stopped noticing it and just let it become the sound the night was made of. Around 2 in the morning, I turned my phone back on just to check the time, and the screen lit up with something like 9 notifications before I'd even unlocked it. I figured it was spam, or Tyler checking on me, and I put the phone face down and tried to sleep. What I didn't know yet, sitting in that laundromat parking lot, was that a larger scheduling software company called Rosterworks had been quietly negotiating to acquire Shiftline for the better part of 4 months, a deal my business partner Priya had been finalizing on her end while I stayed heads down on product work. The wire transfer for $1.4 million had cleared at 11:58 that night, 2 minutes before the deal's contractual deadline, and Priya had been trying to reach me for almost 3 hours to tell me it was done. I found her text around 4 in the morning. "It's done, Owen. Call me the second you see this. We're getting mentioned everywhere." I sat up in that car seat so fast, I hit my head on the ceiling. I called her back with my hands actually shaking, and she confirmed it, calm and a little giddy at the same time. 1.4 million, wired, final, done. I didn't cry, and I didn't shout. I just sat there in a laundromat parking lot at 4 in the morning, with $269 to my name on paper, and considerably more than that, sitting in a business account I hadn't checked yet. That's when I understood why my phone wouldn't stop. TechCrunch had picked up the acquisition an hour after it cleared, a short piece about a 26-year-old building a profitable niche tool and selling it before turning 30. 27 people wanted to talk to me, and not one of them knew I'd spent the night parked behind a laundromat because my own father had put me out with pocket change hours earlier. I started listening to the voicemails in order once the sun came up. The first was a reporter asking for a follow-up quote. The second and third were old classmates I hadn't spoken to in years, suddenly warm, suddenly curious about opportunities. The fourth was Derek, my cousin, the shift supervisor my father had compared me to at dinner, his voice trying hard to sound casual, saying, "Hey man, saw the news, we should definitely link up sometime. Maybe you're looking for people." The 23rd voicemail was my father. He tried to sound casual too, and it came out worse than Derek's attempt because I could hear him deciding what tone to use in real time. "Hey, it's Dad," he said. "Saw something online, didn't know if it was really you. Give us a call. Your mother's worried. You can come by the house." The 25th was my mother, and hers didn't try to sound like anything except what it was. "Owen," she said, "we saw the article this morning. I don't know what to say to you. I should have said something last night before you walked out that door, and I didn't, and I'm sorry. Please just tell me you're safe." I called my parents back around 9 that morning, sitting in that same car, engine finally running for the heat. My mother answered on the first ring. I told her I was safe, that I'd slept in my car, and that yes, the article was real. She started to cry, quietly, the way she cries when she's trying not to make it about her. My father got on the phone a minute later. He asked if it was true, the number, 1.4 million. I told him it was true, and that Shiftline, the computer thing, had 300 paying customers the night he counted out $280 on the kitchen table and told me to get my things. There was a long quiet on his end of the line. "I'm not calling to make you feel small about this," I said. "I'm calling because Mom asked if I was safe, and I wanted her to hear it from me instead of an article. I'm not coming back to that house right now." I didn't need to raise my voice. The silence on his end of that call did the work I would have had to do with words. The same kind of silence that used to fill our kitchen whenever he decided a conversation was over before I was ready for it to be. My mother came to see me 3 days later, at the small apartment I put a deposit on almost immediately, and she cried again, this time holding my hands across a table I'd bought second-hand that same week. She told me she'd never actually looked at what I was building because she assumed she wouldn't understand it, and that not asking had been its own kind of failure on her part, one she was sorry for in a way that felt real instead of convenient. Tyler came by the following weekend, dropped his backpack by the door like he'd always lived there, and asked if he could stay over sometimes when things at home got loud. I told him he could stay whenever he needed to. No questions, no conditions. My father hasn't called since that morning. I called him once, a month later, mostly for Tyler's sake, and the conversation was short and careful on both sides, two people still deciding how much room they have left for each other. This morning I made coffee in my own kitchen, in an apartment nobody can put me out of, and I watched the light come up slow through a window that's entirely mine. It's a small thing. It matters to me more than almost anything else that happened that week. I don't know exactly where things stand with my father, and I've made peace with not knowing yet. I know exactly where I stand with myself, and that part changed permanently the night I sat in a laundromat parking lot with $269 and no idea that 27 strangers and relatives were about to need something from me before I'd even had the chance to process what I'd built. Here's what that night taught me. The people who are supposed to believe in you first sometimes only start believing once the rest of the world already has. And by then, it's fair to ask whether their belief was ever really about you at all. I didn't need my father's approval to know what Shiftline was worth. I just needed one quiet morning to stop waiting for it. Now I want to hear from you. Has your own family ever needed proof from the outside world before they were willing to take you seriously? Tell me about it in the comments below, and where you're watching from tonight. If this one meant something to you, share it with somebody who needs to hear it, and I'll see you in the next one.